We have a pledge of allegiance, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We have a call for
Councilman Howe?
here.
Councilman Green?
Here.
Councilman Mullen?
Here.
Councilman Meinke?
Here.
Councilman Webb?
Here.
Councilman Hutchinson?
Here.
Mayor Stallman?
Here.
And reporter. We have a quorum.
I want to thank the resort owners that did show up. We did make contact with several resort owners, and they are going to be watching Facebook and contacting either Susan or Erica if they have any questions to address the council through the social media. This is a meeting for the City of Old Shoals City Council to address our resort owners and their concerns as far as how we're going to proceed in the future here. There will be no questions asked by our residents. They have their share to express their opinions over the last 10 months, 11 months. But this is so that we can help our resort owners. This whole meeting was with that in mind. I've given out to all you folks and council what our present city ordinance is for C4 and C2 resort owners. Got the definitions. I kind of highlighted all the areas that need to be highlighted. This is our chance to work with you folks, okay, and you working with us. We want you to succeed. So with that, I have Pennitas as our moderator. If you guys got some questions, you want to write them on whiteboard, we'll do that. How do you want to do this?
Well, I would say that come over here. I would ask that the resort owners group tell us what we need to know. What's the main obstacle to being successful here in town? Don't be shy.
So we talked about all year for tourism. I mean, in order for us to survive, we need the people in town. We need people to come in to the shoals.
Tourism.
Yeah.
Well, let her up. Okay. How do we accomplish that? As a member of the Chamber of Commerce, I can say we're working on our end. We can do better, and we will try to do better. What can the city do to bring tourism here?
I'm going to start with the negative side first. We're doing that. That's what we're going first. Top 10 reasons that people avoid going to a community for their vacation. We currently in Old Shoals do and we do loudly out in public. We talk about from the government side of Old Shoals to the community side of Old Shoals. We talk out loud about people not following rules, about people breaking the law, about people not paying their taxes, all kinds of things that are out loud for the whole world to see. So when somebody's on their long vacation spot and they see that, that's one of the top 10 reasons people choose to not visit an airport. I hate that. It's not fun. I like it. You like to done with that. That's part of our public discourse. So to me, that discourages people. Stop doing that. Things that we encourage people are all of us saying the same thing. How wonderful our community is. When Councilman Hutchinson talks about people coming to town and breaking down and getting to drive them someplace and making a wonderful stay for them, that's the right thing. Now we're all on the target. Now we're all saying the right things. And so those are the positive actions that we should all take. We talk to an owl that goes out and beats the drum for archery, for swim beach, or mountain bike trails, or. Those are the right activities, we all should be supportive of that. And Councilman Mike says, hey, we should support some boat tournaments. That's the right thing, we should all be cheering for that, right? So as the positive gets said, we should all latch on to that, and the negative gets said, we should all do more.
Okay. So the other negative results, would you agree that the Facebook, all this negative stuff on Facebook is hurting the city?
Very much.
Absolutely.
We have best access what's going on. We try to put it out as best we can, but I mean, people come out of town and see it. There's, I don't know how many different Bull Shoals information groups out there. And if you look at the members on there, it's more members than there are in the community of Bull Shoals. So obviously it's people outside of Bull Shoals, and everybody's just putting anything negative out there. And all those people see that, and that word mouth spreads, and that affects all of the group, and it just puts that taste in people's mouth, like, why would we go here?
And one of the Facebook pages, I express my appreciation to the moderating of their page, of really trying to keep it social, like information, not spam or not bashing. And I really appreciated their approach on it, trying to really promote the area, while also being also resources for the community, saying, I lost my dog, or I've seen this dog here. If anybody's noticed this, there isn't this negative feeling of it anymore, which has happened in the past, and I think that's really shifted on to that page, which I know a lot of, as they are resort family members, which I'm also personally friends with on Facebook, seeing them following that page and what they have on that page. They can see something that is happening. They can see really the great things that are happening in Bull Shoals instead of constantly following other pages that aren't highlighting the positives, like Mike said, like pushing those positives of what we have to offer. There's a lot to offer, and we're offering so much more. Also, greatly appreciate the increase of pushing the tourism and pushing the activities and pushing the events in our community, and the buy-in of the city council and your presence, and you're promoting it, and you're encouraging it, and you're sharing it on Facebook, on your personal pages, and on other pages and things like that. That's a step in the right direction to try, and there's always going to be those negative things. There's always going to be that negative side, but let the positive be louder. And let it come out more in that, and that's what's going to be a lasting impression.
Do you have your own Facebook page, all of you?
Yes.
From the city, what would you ask that
Have you guys tried to create an organization or a 501c3 for resort owners only to address you guys' concerns or issues, or is that something that you're looking at down the road here? Or?
Well, last week, the city council workshop last week, I started a Facebook group, mostly trying, and my intention was to have it be resorts in Bull Shoals, but it's blown to resorts around the entire perimeter of Bull Shoals. And it's going to be exciting. I'm excited for it. This is something that's happening around Norfolk Lake, and it's been really good for them. And in a way, it's like, it's not a club, we're not trying to set the Association of Resorts in Bull Shoals, or on Bull Shoals. And that's a place where we can try and get others involved in conversation. And I mean, we've started to try and meet once a month, and trying to get other resort owners to come around the food and around the conversation. And because when there's food present, it's easier to talk. It takes the away from it. And so our next meeting is next Monday at our place for resort owners to come, not just C4, but all resort owners in Bull Shoals to come and just have a conversation. And the last time we met, we sat, I think, almost 3 hours. Like, I was like, it is dark. I was good time. But we just sat and we talked, and we shared what kind of sheets do you use? But it is building that relationship that isn't always just around city politics, but also in that relationship, because if you don't have that relationship built, it's really hard to have these conversations in a positive way and in an effective way. And I think we agree to disagree on stuff, and that's fine, two different businesses. Like, yes, we're both resort owners, but their resort looks a lot different than our resort. And I think we can find harmony in that. And I think that's just what's going to happen, and that's what is happening.
Mike?
So I want to circle back to the tourism thing. That's been kind of, we've been trying to treat something without actually looking at the cause, right? Like property alarms that we were having with the way we go through big news is because we don't have the adequate resources for resorts we use as resorts. We don't have people coming like we used to, but we keep trying to do different things to change the situation, but we never target the actual problem, and that's tourism. So since the special meeting came out, I've been on the phone with KY3, Lamar Billboards, and I've gotten quotes for television advertising as well as billboard advertising. And if we work in conjunction with the Chamber of Commerce, we can get a lot better deals off this. I've forwarded all of you the stuff that I got. But we're never going to get anywhere until we start focusing on this main point. You know, I've said this a million times. When the dam was built, this town was able to ride on the curtails of the dam being built and the recreation behind it. A long time ago, we went from recreation to retirement, and we solely focused on that. We fell behind the internet, we fell behind marketing, we fell behind anything that any city that is now prospering was doing, and that's the brass tacks of it. So we have solely been working towards getting more of that traction, but our guerrilla warfare style of doing this and the volunteerism behind it can only get us so far. I can't drive to Springfield and hand out hamburgers on a Saturday. Start putting into this in a way that's fruitful. So on top of contacting KY3 and Lamar Billboards, I also contacted Delaney Thomas, the Director of Tourism for the state, and she's going to send us all the data that shows where most people come from. And then my recommendation, we all come together, we figure out a really cool, we use the old adder one and we shorten it up, but we have to do something to start getting in front of people. So just to give everyone an idea of sort of the cost for this, it's all dependent on which network we're on. But for like KY3 itself, NBC is anywhere from $4,500 to $7,500 a month. I'm not saying we do every single month, but if we start targeting that January through April people that are starting to book their holidays, starting to do it, we can put out a couple months realistically of television advertisement and it not be that huge of a cost. Because this is the kind of thing that's going to pay dividends. If you don't know, don't understand this. Double our outdoor recreation and tourism budget. That's like $4 billion now. We would be absolutely silly not to align ourselves with that and start putting our chips next to hers. So, AEC is $3,000 to $6,000, and then the CW is $2,000 to $4,000. The Lamar Billboards, they kind of vary a bit depending on size, location, and material. But what Mr. Rainwater told me is if we work through in conjunction with the Chamber of Commerce, we can have digital billboards in Batesville and stuff for a few $100 to start off. So we have to start doing something because I'm very proud of us. We've done a great job with the daily volunteer effort to try to push everything, but we have to take it to the next level and put it in the hands of people that can do more for us. Because that's when, not only the infrastructure of Casey's coming in, finally we have some of our people who build their motorhome anyway. So we have that infrastructure coming back now that was really needed before. We were just kind of inviting people to come up to a town and then go spend their money everywhere else. So I would love to work with you guys on this. I would love to work with everyone on this, but we have to do something more than what we're doing. Because the real issue here is the tourism. If people aren't coming here, then we're creating a situation for our resorts, for our restaurants, that needs to be mitigated. So I'll send this out to everybody so everyone can see it, and contact me, and we'll start putting together a plan that everybody likes to figure out a way to raise the money for.
And I also have called out to Ozark Mountain Region, they have a board meets quarterly.
Is that Joe Lito, as the contact person?
Yeah, so I'm wanting to get on some of this stuff, so that Bull Shoulder in general can get involved as welcome centers and have more, just more visibility in those areas.
So Whitehall Media, I don't know if anyone's familiar, I was saying they started putting out maps for our thing, I think they started entering into some of those markets too. So, it's moving in the right direction.
I'm hearing funding, is what I'm hearing.
Money, baby.
Money.
We gotta have
Where's
it
it come from? Does it come from Resort Owners Group, Chamber of Commerce, the
Well,
city?
it should be a combination, I think, and here's a perfect opportunity for all of us to kind of put some things aside and do something to raise some sort of sponsorship funds together for the group, because it's gonna benefit us.
I feel like we took a step past the giant elephant that is.
We're gonna get to it.
Well, it's hard to say, hey, let's don't put money on that, which is awesome. Everything you said, I will.
I'm not saying for you guys to put money in the pot, I'm saying for all of us to come together to raise money.
Right, so
Yeah, I'm not asking.
however it works, everything you said, I love it. But I'm gonna walk out of here, and I'm gonna go home, and there's gonna be a ticket waiting for me. I don't know if you guys are aware that that stuff goes on continuously, these letters go out.
There will not be a ticket issue.
Okay.
I'll tell you that right now.
Okay, because as we try to work together, it's difficult for me to sit there and say, oh, there's a lot of goodwill, let's walk out here and do this, because each time, the mayor and I try to have a meeting with resort owners 3 different times, and I go home and there's a letter, or say, hey, you're going to get this. And I go, for what? And then I want to read this out loud again, and I want to say, general description, the district is intended to provide for resorts. Let me go back, let me read what it actually says. Commercial resorts in a residential district. Sequel. Okay, residential district. All of our resorts are in residential districts. All of them. They're in a residential district. As soon as we cease being resorts, we're residential. That's how it works. It's not a vote. You don't get to say, are you a resident or not residential? It says, shall revert to, not anything else. Right, so we have council members, we've got committee members standing up and saying they're not a resort in public meetings. That's criteria 1. Say that we're not a resort in a public meeting. That's criteria 1. Criteria 2, rezone. So I don't understand the fight. I don't understand why there's a constant churn, why there's a constant fight. I think this meeting, we can pass that.
May I say something? I think there's some issues that have happened, Mike, that have added to the fire on both ends, and I don't think either are acceptable. But my first part of this, bear with me for a second, because I think you'll appreciate what I have to say, but when you move next to an airport, you don't get to complain about that. Okay? When you move next to a farm that then wants to become an airport, you get to complain about that. So we have citizens who moved in next to resorts. And I represent everybody. I represent you, I represent these people, so bear with me. Mm-hmm. So I think people, when they start seeing this, for instance, advertisements on Zillow for apartments, okay? You have said that I said that you weren't acting as a resort. In fact, what I said was advertising on Zillow is not acting as a resort. Okay, when you're putting apartments out there, that's not a resort. Now, if you're on VRBO for Airbnb, that's acting as a resort, no question. I'd say that's pretty fair. And that has upset citizens that I represent, so we have to speak for them as well. So, now you're saying it wasn't a resort, well, these people seem to think that they moved in next to a resort. So, it's a little convoluted.
Thank you. how we choose to advertise is a whole mixed bag of things. And how we would choose to use Zillow is for our background checks.
Like,
So we,
I'm not gonna say who cares about it. I'm 37 years old. I'm very familiar with Zillow. I'm very familiar with the RDO. And when there's a $900 price tag on a Zillow advertisement, that does not reflect a nightly, weekly, monthly rate. It shows that you're advertising a group. When there's a thing about HUD housing on there, we don't ever talk about HUD housing in respect to resorts, you know what I'm saying? And I'm not arguing with you here, I'm just saying, there is a perception that other people have to that sort of thing. I know it's down, and I have seen you guys advertise a resort, and that's acting as a resort. There's a difference.
I come across 4 of his units that are $83 to $120-something.
I've seen you do, and that's acting as a resort.
So I'm the one who's responsible for those posts. And I do it for background checks, and it's a monthly rate that we do. We do monthly rates, we don't sign leases, we are not saying that we're partners, when we talk to people. But I'm letting people through the background check, I'm doing exactly that with Zillow, and it feeds out to, I do it in one place, and it's in Zillow, in order to use that, and it feeds out to Trulia, and I'm not sure what that is. But that's great.
those are all kind of things.
So I'm the one who does those listings, I'm responsible for that, and I mean, it's a process that we're using, because if people are coming for a month, I want to know who's coming. My kids live on the property. I want background checks, I want credit checks, I want to know that they're going to pay us, and that they're decent people who lie without looking at the space.
But I mean, it comes down to, if you guys are doing a monthly agreement with someone, okay, we're gonna go back to how do we advertise, how do we create money for these advertisements. This is just spitballing here, okay? If it sticks, it sticks. But if you guys get the resort owners here in town that want to, the state requires bed tax if you do a monthly agreement, okay, for the first month. After that, they don't get that bed tax anymore. They don't, if that same person is renting the second, third, fourth, and fifth month, okay, they're not getting that bed tax. They only get it for that first month. Okay, if you guys have some sort of an association together where the resorts that want to get into it, okay, your second and third or fourth agreement month, you put a certain amount, be it $1 a day, 50 cents a day, a quarter a day for that month, goes into an advertisement account for resorts that are in on it. Okay, I know, the question was, well, they're already being taxed far enough as it is. It's not coming out of your pocket, it's coming out of the person that's staying with you. Okay, so if you got $900 for that month, you're going to collect $910 on your second and third month. That $10 goes into a pot for helping out with advertisement for those resorts that are actually in this association. Okay, this, like I said, this is just my view. Okay, you don't have to take it, but it's a way that we can help create some revenue for advertising. And the other thing is, if the city council has to address how you're going to do a monthly agreement, okay, we're not going to allow leases over a month, okay. This is to your benefit, okay. If you want to get rid of someone who has been a pain in the rear, okay, for the month, you're able to do it by just, hey, please, we want you over here, this person needs to be removed, okay? You already had that agreement set in that month, you can get them out without going to the sheriff's department or a small claims court and trying to get them evicted, which is going to take 8 months, okay? So this is a way that, the council could turn around and adjust our C4 resorts or C2 resorts, stating that they can take a monthly agreement, okay? And if it's 6 months to a year down the road, they're losing out if the city does their job bringing in tourism, okay? Because you're gonna make more money on $83 a night than you are $900 a month. Just put it out there.
Yeah, we see it clearly.
I don't know if this is, something that the city needs to look at. We changed our rules to include, monthly agreements. I don't know what I did there.
Want to address that?
I couldn't find anywhere in the code that where the had a set number of nights. Did I overlook that?
No.
Okay, because I have been getting this communication from, officials, and if it's not specified, then does that have to be guys, like, or is that just a guidance that's given to the order saying, don't do this? I mean, does that have to be a code? Like, does that have to be written as a code, or is that just a guidance given to resort owners?
I think it's got to be written in the code just for the fact that if you're doing a lease agreement, that you're falling into a multifamily situation, okay, where then you are able to bring in Schedule 8 or whatever, Section 8 individuals. Okay, if you're no longer resorted, Section 8 can be brought in for homes, verbals, Airbnbs, and people that are renting their home now. They can pay Section 8 people. Resorts cannot in the state of Arkansas. Okay.
I want to circle back to what you said about the night. You're 100% right. And this is the exact point in this conversation where everything has been going awry. All right, this is ground zero. There's tourism and then there's this. No one cares. Not a single person up here or out there. If you have a crew of guys working on the streets, staying at the resort for 8 months, no one cares. Not a single person. What people care about is when they see a U-Haul roll up in front of the resort and someone's unloading their own furniture. That's where people are getting a ride from. So you're right, there is, and I fully recommend you encourage people to stay as long as they possibly can and make that money. But where things are going sideways is when we're starting to see the perception of people who are using. I've never once brought my own furniture on vacation. Never once.
So, with that in mind, what about people who are looking to move here and they don't want to pay a storage space on top of their unit space that they're staying with us? That's a different story.
Exactly, but it's perception of it. And that's a great point, 100%. But this is where it's going sideways.
And it's really that point. We've had multiple people do that already who have left us and bought a home. And so we're in that spot.
We're finishing the rooms one at a time and we're empty already, so we're like,
Well, do they plant a garden too?
Yes, absolutely. And I know the garden is a sticking point, which I don't understand.
What do you mean? I've never been to a resort and planted a garden, like.
There are community gardens everywhere.
That's not a community garden. It's not beat around the bush. That guy's been there forever. We don't even murky it up.
It's fine.
But
It absolutely is.
But this is where it's going sideways, is no one cares if you guys have people staying there, and that's a great point, maybe people do need to put their stuff somewhere. I can totally understand that.
So I think the rub, that constant rub that we're at ground zero right now, is if we're not a resort, rezone us to residential. If we're a resort, then let's get on board and be a resort. We are a resort. We have been a resort, we're going to continue operating as a resort. We don't have year-long leases. I want nothing to do with Section 8 tenants moving in. Not our business plan, not anything we're working with. Haven't been.
wasn't the goal even from the beginning.
We're not the ones who brought it up, ever. But for a year, we've been hearing about it. And I don't understand why I've been hearing about it, because not part of anything we're doing. And so, as we continue to meet the next person's needs, whoever they are, who's coming to town, it's gonna look different each time. We're gonna be flexible, we're gonna be okay with that. If the community's not okay with that, there's a remedy. I don't know what else to say about that.
The bad thing is the remedy, okay, is like you said, you're either a resort, you're saying you're a resort, you're saying you're a resort, okay? Once you seek to be a resort, you turn into multifamily. But once you become, and that depends on a hearing, okay, that you have to go through, city council then has to make approval on it, okay? But if you then become a multifamily, you can, and you can accept Section 8 vouchers. But people aren't understanding that, okay? If you are a resort, you cannot in the state of Arkansas. So I don't know where the rub is, and who brought this Section 8 up in the first place. It can't be done, so.
So, I'm just kind of struggling a little bit here. I want to address a couple things that you brought up early on. I agree with you 100% that it doesn't look good when the council argues about stuff. But I have a responsibility to everybody in this town that calls me on the phone, sends me emails, and says, I want this talked about, I want this brought up, and it's not always fun. This sucks in a lot of ways. It is not fun to have to bring up zoning and have to bring up problems with people's signs and people having dirty yards and grass growing, but that's my job. That's what I was elected to do. And yes, it is unpleasant. It is very unpleasant. I try to avoid it whenever possible, but when I get overwhelming emails and stuff, I get it. I have to address it. There's no way to not do that. Because the second we don't do that, what happens? We get accused of hiding things, of not being transparent, not doing our jobs, okay? The other thing about Facebook, let's be real about Facebook, okay? There's about 5 or 10 people that are throwing the rocks, that are doing this. That's it.
That's all it takes, though.
I get it. But what it takes is starving those people of oxygen. So when they do things, and you see that people are members of those groups, you need to have a hard conversation with those people. And I have with a lot of people about why do you even go there? Why do you even read this garbage? And if there's no members in the groups go away. If there's no discourse, after a while they get tired of making up fake people. And if you go on there and do any kind of research at all, and I can't anymore because I'm banned from all of them, but if anybody goes on there and does any kind of research, 90% of the accounts are fake. And I get it. It's very detrimental to the city. It's also very insulting to people like me and people like Mike or the mayor or anybody that are just constantly personally attacked. I don't like to have my family see memes of me being a target. Okay, especially when they take the wrong leg off, which is really, it's like I only got one good one left. But, I get it, and I get that that's a problem. The reality is that nothing in this town that is the basis of this town is still here. The river's still here, the lake's still here. What has changed is the people. The people have changed. And the attitudes have changed. And we need to get that back on track. We're doing everything we can to do that. We're doing everything that we can. But when we get into these arguments about what's a resort, it's okay to bring your furniture to a resort. Come on. This is just silly. It's just silly. It's common sense. It's just common sense. At some point, you've got to step back from this and everything else and just apply common sense. That's it.
And so here's the problem. We just stepped on it again. So people email and call overwhelmingly. You like to starve them of oxygen, and yet we don't send people Article 4-8 as a rationale, as a response. So if I can receive and I'm getting overwhelming phone calls. These people are rural, they're gonna bring in section 8, whatever the story is. And I don't read them the code. I'm giving them this information, and I just handed it out again.
I have not gotten
Use
one,
common sense.
I have not gotten one phone call or email about Section 8 out, period.
Okay, you said the other day in March, you get stuck in the corner and have to answer questions about it, and just now you say you get overwhelming emails.
Right, but not about, I'm not going down the Section 8 rabbit hole. I'm not gonna go down the Section 8 rabbit hole.
Let's go on.
What I'm talking about is people, exactly what Mike said, they moved in next to something they perceived was a resort, and now they're moving in, they're finding that it wants to morph into something else. I agree with you, if you wanna have a change, then get a zoning change, okay? That requires, as far as and anybody on the council can correct me, as far as I know, it has to go through planning and zoning, which will make a recommendation, and it will come to us. Correct?
But what zoning change do we need? This is the conversation we need.
That's what we're trying to
And
do.
that is
It
why,
doesn't need to be a zoning change, because it's written there in black and white, and you keep wanting it to come back to opinion. But you're not willing to read what's written in black and white.
I've read it through,
Then
it's not that I'm not
what's
willing.
the zoning change that needs to be made?
I'm gonna rely on planning and zoning to tell me that, with working with you guys to come up with a recommendation to us.
And we both know how that's going to go.
Well, I mean, this
Yeah.
is,
When you asked me that the first time, when I first got here, you asked me to do that. I came to planning and zoning with a draft resolution for planning and zoning to chew on. So then for them to go behind their closed doors and chew on it, draft it up, and make changes to it, reach out to the public, go through a process, ask how do we want this to look, then to send it to you all for you guys to chew on it, to you to send it out to the public, and you make changes to then vote on it. And instead, in that very meeting, you all clowned around and said this is an application for some nonsense that I never even remotely brought forward.
Well,
And
two
then-
things. Number one, there's no closed door meetings of planning and zoning, am I correct? Are all planning and zoning meetings public?
Yes.
Okay, so that is untrue, and I resent clowning around. I take my job really seriously, okay? So I'm not doing things behind someone's back, that's not true. And number two, I'm not clowning around. I'm taking this seriously. I live here, I have businesses here. I'm vested, I appreciate that, but I didn't say you were clowning around, did I? I didn't.
Let's stay on task here. Let's stay on task. And that task is, how do we fix this problem?
right.
We already know what C4 zoning is. It's like this, black and white. So if you want to rezone, go to planning and zoning, ask to rezone.
But again, that goes back to, we don't, if we're not operating as a resort, and at the last planning and zoning meeting that I was at, majority of the people who were there in planning and zoning raised their hand and said we are not operating as a resort. So you talked about how offensive things are to you. I'm extremely offended by my attendance at those meetings. I've been to 2 planning and zoning meetings, and they both have been a kangaroo court where it's, no one is looking at the code. We're making suppositions, so if that's the case, then we should be rezoned. If we're not a resort, we are not acting as a resort, we should be rezoned. I'd like to read a list of the things that we've been doing that sound very different than that. We've been here since last year. It's been almost a year that we've been here. And during that time, since July, we've had short-term people. We've been operating as a resort. We have worked our tails off to make that place presentable. We worked our tails off to make it just so we can stay there when we got here. But we have worked our tails off, and I know that we have brought in tax dollars through resort activity that this town and the state haven't seen from that resort in 5 or 10 years. But we've hosted an event around 200 people recently. We've hosted people from more than 86 cities in this, not even a full year. We host people on Airbnb and VRBO continually, and we connect them with fun things to do in the area and send them to every business in this area. We take reservations over the phone and answer questions about the area regularly. We purchase disc golf baskets and are working towards a plan for setting up a beginner course on the property. We hosted fishermen for multiple tournaments so far. We hosted people for their birthdays and anniversaries. We've had multiple large boats on our properties with our owners who've already scheduled return trips to Belleville. We're hosting a team from Tyson during this tournament that's coming up this weekend. We host regular campfire gatherings. We turn rooms and use our washers and dryers for laundry continually. We regularly check guests in and out. We're hosting a film crew making a feature film in a couple of weeks. We worked on an easy system for our guests to secure a boat slip while staying with us. We've met with and will continue meeting with other resort owners in town. We are actively seeking partners to open our restaurant, our lounge, to make plans for an event space, and we're building a community garden. We are a resort, we act as a resort, and we completely intend on continuing to act as a resort. And so the things that you're saying, according to that, and that planning and zoning, have raised their hands, most of the people who were in that meeting, said we are not acting as a resort. So you can tell me that you're offended, I'm offended too, because since day one that we have been here, there have been rumors that our business partner who teaches fourth grade math is out there teaching people how to buy up apartments and turn them into Section 8 and 5. And that's what we're going to do with this space. And we came to Full Shoals because we love it. We think it's beautiful, and we have met wonderful people here. We get inundated with phone calls and emails and Facebook messages about how great our space looks and what good job we're doing, and how thankful people are that we've come to town and we're making a difference in that space. We're creating a community of families who are returning already, and we haven't even been here a year.
And that's why you're not going to be getting a citation, because what was written in that letter, you do not violate. I'm sorry. So there will be no citation given.
Thank you.
That's okay.
Yeah.
You aren't violating anything. Our lawyer already said, if you're acting as a resort, you are a resort. And you'll continue to be a resort.
Thank you.
I don't think we need to rewrite our commercial resorts in a residential area. I'm trying to figure out how can we get other resorts on board to be actually a resort all the time. Okay, I don't care if you got 4 units, at least one of them's got to be a resort. Otherwise, you're going to have to be rezoned.
We would prefer that. All of the rooms to be just constant in and out. Yeah. And creating this community and what we're doing. Yeah. And to be able to say, I'm sorry, we don't have space for a monthly rental because we have too many weekends.
As part of the problem, I like communication. That's what it appears to be. Our city's not talking to resorters aren't talking to
That's
cities.
why we're here.
Exactly. Maybe we need this on a regular basis, or some kind of a report from a resort group. You guys figure it out. But communication, I think, is going to be the key here. And right now, I learned from human nature, when you don't know what the answer is, you put in the worst possible scenario and go with that. And right now, it has to be Section 8 housing. Now, I did a little survey here all weekend. I went up at every resort, I went up at every apartment. We've got 3 apartment complexes here in town. We got Lake Wind, we have Marywood, and we've got 1050. They're all operating in apartments, and they all take Section 8 housing. And they are not full. So we don't need Section 8 housing in this town. We have it. And it's not even being utilized. So I don't know why everybody keeps thinking you're going to be in Section 8 housing when you said you're not. You've not done anything to show that you are being Section 8 housing. I think we need better communication with everyone. So I'll let you figure out how to do that.
I'm getting ready to stand up. The last time I ever got in trouble, I can't do that anymore. Since the Davenports owned that place up there on the hill, I went through there at that time. I was looking at what they were doing, and they were wanting to keep it a resort. We people want to keep it as a resort. It's not up to me to tell you how many places you need to have open at one time as long-term rentals so that you can stay with your head above water and continue to make improvements on your property. That's not up to us. We've had people try to say that we had to dictate, the city council,
that you could only have 2 places if you had 4. And then you could only keep it open from November until April, every time all the people had to leave so you could be a resort. That's not our job. I don't need to know how your finances are working as long as you're keeping your head above water and your kid can play stickball. I don't need to know all that. What I need to know is that you want to stay a resort, that you're staying a resort, and that's how you're functioning your business. Yes, there's been a lot of fear mongering going on, and I will say that out loud. There are people who want to interject that you people, they don't even know who you are, but you want to run Section 8, you want to do this, you want to do that. That's just fear mongering. And it doesn't work, and all it does is destroy. You know, we took this position so we can try to save this city. And we're not gonna do it if we keep falling under the sword by somebody casting all these weird things out there. You can't, if you're a resort, do Section 8. He's already brought up, we have 3 places in town that are not full that have Section 8. That's not part of the problem. You know, it's just simple logic. You people need to survive. And if you don't survive, the city's not going to survive. And that's just the honest to God fact. Without you, the city crooks. Without resorts, without tourism, and Mike brought it up, without tourism, this city's done. And you're done. If we can't get people into your place to stay, we have to put these fears behind us and start working together as a group. Not individuals, not with my own state looking at what can I get out of it, but what can we get the city get out of it if we work together. And that's why we want all the resort owners here, so we can sit there and work this out. And yeah, you can say, yeah, you're allowed long-term rentals. More than 30 days, it's fine. Because you need it to survive. And that's just the truth of it. You know, I'm done. Sure? Yeah, I'm done.
One of the thoughts that I had was, make an amendment to Article 4-8. Okay, being that resort owners are able to do a monthly agreement with individuals for whatever time they're able. Okay. And that, you know, might help our evolution altogether. And then you guys try to get together some sort of a deal where you have some income coming in to advertise the ones that are with the association. But we won't have to put that in there. Even if we're going to try to put an amendment to 4-8.
Yes, don't say lease.
Not lease, yes. Don't put 30 days either. It's a rental. It's a monthly agreement. I mean, that would be a solution that we just, you know, put an amendment or Section B in that resort owner and do a monthly agreement. And that's just a matter of, you know, passing a, you know, amendment to this ordinance. And I think that's going to help you folks out, okay, that you're going to be able to sustain some sort of income coming in. I mean, it's just like Adam with Chandler's. His next project is to come into town and fix a hotel over here.
That's where we renovated.
You know, but he's got to finish the one in Lakeview first, okay? But he also said he can't get a loan from a bank unless he has some sort of income coming in. And it may take 4 to 6 units that he has to rent out. Okay, or, you know, on a monthly agreement, okay? I got it down there. But I think that's going to help our solution.
I was going to say, I'm just really glad that we're here to work this out. It's been going on for way too long.
governments must work on facts and written ordinances are sometimes hard to understand. We must welcome new businesses to our city and do what we can to help them. We must do what's best for the city of Woods Shoals. I had the fortune to go to Pierce Ferry to the tournament down there. It's coming here in October 3rd and 4th. I met with the tournament director, and he's very excited about the Woods Shoals. He's got roots here. They're going to fish for 2 days, which so we're getting the large tournament. This is the one that we're hosting. There was probably 100 plus boats there when I was there, and they were having a great time. What he told me, and I'm going to ask y'all to do this, is we have a spot, a link on the website, I think you can familiar with this. So it says, a host, that will be us, we're hosting that tournament, and then there's a section at the bottom, if you know, say, it's RP division, and then you scroll down, 2026, they show that they're putting the whole show on the website. The bottom section of that website page will say housing. So what he encouraged me to do is to get, we want only the resorts in both shoals on that website. So what I'd like you to do is to put something together, and then you can work with Susan. Susan has been communicating with Christy, is that right? And he said, then you just send him that link, and he will put that on their national website page. That is who the fishermen would contact. But whatever you guys want to put, it's in control of that. The Chamber of Commerce is about the resorts. So he encouraged me to make sure that we get that. And then the city will put our city website on the posting part of it. Because right now it says to be determined, and it's only we need to take care of that. So the last tournament is next month, and then they're off for a whole 3 months. 1 month. So October is the last tournament, and we're doing an official tournament. They'll be very excited to come in. He said it's one of his favorite lakes in Arkansas to fish. He knows people at people are he's married with people who work with them. So he has roots here. He promised himself, and when he told me, he made us happy. So he knows him. Well, it's a great place to fish. It's a great place to come. I'm very excited. So I was asking to put something together, and you can do it, and just a link of something that we can put on the way, I'll put it on the
Thank you for that.
Any additional questions or comments?
I'm going to go back to what Elise said about it. It's not broke. I don't know why we're trying to fix it. No, you said it differently than that. But if the current Caribbean resorts in a residential district doesn't preclude 31 days, I don't know how we benefit from adding it in. And the unintended consequences of properties like, and I don't know these owners, and I'm not talking about any human, I'm just talking about the zoning. 202 Summit Avenue and 106 Summit Avenue. Those are both C4 resorts, they're single family houses. And they're just sitting there. And so as soon as
That whole section there is known as C4, and those people have been violating it for years. And that's Hudson development.
right, and so if a change like that happens, now they're breaking a rule which has got slid underneath them. Where right now, we're not actually breaking a rule, because right now, they just,
Well, they never got rezoned properly either.
they should be.
They took that whole area. It was all Crow's area.
If a resort sees this as a tourist resort, or it's rebuilt for a different use, the land and structure shall revert. There's no, I know there's this back and forth about how that process works out. The reality is it should be collaborative. But if it leans on one person versus another, those property owners don't own zoning. It's not, they don't wake up in the morning and go, I'm zoning this. It's the city who owns the zoning. Right? So it's incumbent on the city to say, our zoning maps, not property.
Yeah, it should have been changed years ago when it started going on.
Right. I've got a letter here from another resort owner saying the same thing, you know. She gave me permission to read it. And it's really the same thing. it says, hey, I have this place that I own. I've called Old Shoals home for 30 years. I care deeply about how our community operates. Over a decade ago, I informed the city I was no longer operating 601 Short Crest Drive as a resort. Now, after all this time, it seems we're finally acknowledging that change in use. However, the process moving forward needs to align with our own rules, our own Bull Shoals zoning ordinance. According to Article 4A, if the property is C4 zone ceases to operate as a resort, it shall revert to a residential zone. It's not a penalty, it's not a violation, it's a change of use and is explicitly allowed. The ordinance doesn't restrict this reversion to R1 or R1 through 3. This should have been addressed years ago, but it wasn't. The Planning and Zoning Commission has a clear role and lists the rules to recommend the appropriate zoning to City Council when the Council makes the final determination on what zoning property is rezoned into. And rather than that, a ticket was issued. And so the resolution they're asking for is to withdraw the letter from the commission because it doesn't align with the proper process or authority to withdraw the citations and to issue new property. To follow the ordinance as written, to recommend the correct residential zoning for the property, and send a letter from council outlining when that's going to happen. And then it asks to handle it over the honestly. And so I know you all are maybe tired of that tone from me, but this is the resort ordinance, right? It's one of the 8 left in town.
I don't know with that, Mike, so, okay, she left a few things out in her rule. If the resort ceases as a tourist resort, or is rebuilt for a different use other than a resort, the land and structure shall revert to any applicable residential district after a public hearing by the commission to determine the question of fact and referring a rezoning recommendation to the council of the city. She left that out, and she never had a public hearing. Never applied for a public hearing.
And I think actually there was about 6 years ago. Here in the general neighborhoods.
And rather than the...
Well, they had the public hearing that, that was done and over with, so.
Yeah, but it wasn't done. So the point is that the code says shall revert. It doesn't say if the neighbors don't want it to adjust. That's not the neighbor's choice.
No, they had a public hearing, they brought it to the city council, and the city council said, no, you're going to continue as a resort.
And now they're fining her for not operating as a resort.
Exactly. Because she's not. She came into my office and she's been renting a unit for over 2 years.
Yes.
Okay, to the same person who owes her over $4,000 back pay.
Correct.
Okay, and wanted to know what the city could do for her. I said, well, you can go to the county courthouse and do a small claims court and then try to get it per evicted.
Correct.
So,
yeah, I think everything you're saying is spot on. I think that nuanced piece, or that piece that you and I may not see the same way, is it's not her job to get rezoned, and it's not somebody else's job to say we're going to allow it or not. The code says shall revert to an applicable residential zone. So it's not that it's up to somebody to say, well, we don't want to rezone from resort. Her resort use is gone. That's her right, is to not run a resort. She doesn't have to run a resort.
But that doesn't give her a right to run it as an apartment.
right.
Well, it does if she's residentially zoned, and any residential zone.
But she's not residential zone. She's zoned as a resort,
Right.
in a residential area.
But whose job is it to rezone?
Well, she got a public hearing and it was shot down through public discourse, right? So she had a hearing 6 years ago, as Tyler just said, and it was shot down, so she is still zoned as a resort. The zoning doesn't change. The zoning just doesn't poof go away into residential. It doesn't work like that. There's still border lines on the map.
Then that's the piece that we're all not getting on the same page about. Because as I read this, it says clearly that it's up to planning and zoning to rezone it. It just, I'm sorry, not to rezone it. Let's just read.
The first paragraph says, this district is intended to provide for resorts presently operating in the residential district. It is also the intent of this ordinance to allow these resorts to remain commercial, but they shall not be permitted to alter or extend to a non-resort use, such as multifamily.
Second paragraph.
And then, second paragraph is what I've already read. If a resort ceases as a tourist resort or is rebuilt for a different use other than a resort, the land and structure shall revert to any applicable residential district after a public hearing by the commission to determine the question of fact and referring a rezoning recommendation to the council of the city.
So which part of that? So do we just need to knock out the jail part? I mean, I don't know. Well, okay, but it says right there has to be a public hearing. That's, and we're saying, let's go off of our ordinance. I'm not trying to get off that part. But it says in the ordinance we just read, there has to be a public hearing.
By who?
Planning and zoning, Mike.
Right. Does the property owner need to attend that meeting?
The property owner, according to this, okay, in the ordinance, for a hearing, the way you go about having a hearing is you apply for a hearing. Okay, hearing permit. Am I correct? I mean, that's what
60 people that signed the petition.
you have to
That's
have
gonna be
a public hearing by the planning commission. So, I mean,
Mayor, is there anything that says we can't have a second public hearing? 6 years ago, things have changed.
What I'm saying is she has to apply for a public hearing.
Can she?
Yes, she can. Anybody can. She can do it.
She would come in here tomorrow, I could get a second hearing.
She would have to, pay the permit fee, okay, to have a hearing. And,
But I can't imagine being a former business owner, if I got out of business and the city came to me and said, no, you can't get out of business, you have to go back into the rest and do what you want.
But no one's making them run the resort. No one's making them run the resort. It's totally as a resort. Just because you decided you're not going to do that anymore doesn't mean you get to do something else. It goes back to, I move next to a farm, not an airport. Okay, that's why we have these zoning, so that when citizens move into a town, they know where they're moving. And if we're gonna go off of what's black and white, there's clearly a sentence in what we just read that says there needs to be a public hearing. And by this course, through the channels of this town, that is through planning and zoning, then by recommendation to council. That is how it goes. And what I'm feeling like is you just don't like it.
No, I think the cities are different.
I think so. What I asked about for this meeting was, if we come to a point of disagreement that we can't get past from here, let's write it down. And let's meet again and have that conversation again.
Because we're not getting anywhere by playing semantics.
Oh, agreed.
So
There's two different sections of the code. One where I go to apply to have my property changed into something, and that's where everyone gets to decide do I and then allow it or not. Then there's this other one, which is right here, which says this shall happen.
So if you're operating as a resort, then why are you worried?
Exactly.
No, I'm serious. Like, why are we worried about this section in the code if you're operating as a resort? Why are we having a redundant conversation if you're already operating as a resort?
Again, this is really my disagree. So when I read this code, this article, I had read the actual hearing. And what I read that and how I interpreted that, which is a lot of these codes are up to interpretation. It's a way to save resorts from having someone who might lose power that doesn't like or get to be involved about a business that is done with that. So they can then say, I don't think you're running as a resort, so we're going to rezone you without a public hearing. Now that can't happen with how it's written right now. But if we take out after a public hearing out of that code, if we get a disgruntled neighbor, we have no chance of fighting to save our resorts.
Right.
Because it's a resort. But they see a truck come in or they see that we have somebody staying for what they see, or what they assume, because a lot of things that are happening lately have been assumptions that I've been hearing. They're not actually conversations that have been, should be happening, it's assumptions. And what I'm afraid of happening is someone gets into a place of power, and if that part is removed from that code, then we're at risk of losing everything that we have poured our families, literally blood, sweat, and tears into. And so I would just say, I don't necessarily agree with taking out or arguing the African American, because that's how there's due process of protecting businesses, protecting citizens, protecting. The reason we voted against the rezoning of that, quite frankly, there was a registered sex offender living next to our daughters. The parole officer had no idea they moved because they were flying at the radar. And that's what we were saying. We don't want that in our neighborhood. We don't want that in our neighborhood. Now, if we approach it a different way, we have conversations now and today and saying, okay, what's your plan now? We have those conversations, but at that time, 6 years ago, that's what was happening in that moment, in that time surrounding that community. If then we have another period, I don't know what we're saying. I can't say what we're saying because we haven't had the interaction with the neighbors. We haven't had that issue. And so that's where this public hearing is a way to save businesses and also protect citizens. And
So that's why we
if
need
you
to
don't
have,
want to run into work, we need to live in the house and have empty vacant buildings.
that's why we have a public hearing in place to
Yeah.
protect everybody.
Yes, and that's why, like, that's where, just from that view of it, seeing that, and maybe it's just the wording of it, the after the hearing, the beginning of the sentence, and not the end of the sentence. Semantics, like, there's some of that in here that's questionable, like, there's a lot of words, which means there's options, and I'm hearing a lot of there needs to be and, is what I've been hearing a lot from planning and zoning people that have been calling me, saying, it's this and this and this, and I'm saying, actually it says or, so it could be any of those options.
But it's just like shall, that is not must.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? It's shall. It doesn't mean that it's in stone and must have.
Just like it says, the definition of motel and inn, here contains one or more buildings designed or intended to be used as temporary living facility. That or in there is an option. It's not an and. It's designed and intended. That's kind of the definition on page 6, definition 44. There's also orders in 28 of the hotels building requirement.
Yeah, can you mark page 29 or somewhere for the discrepancy about, we're discussing that.
44 is motels and inns, and 54 is resorts.
Yeah, and like we were like, oh, we should probably maybe offer not at a resort because we don't provide food. but that's the way that's right, because we would need to provide lodging, food, beverages, rest, and recreational areas. But we provide lodging, recreational areas, and rest.
I was gonna say, you got a little bit.
I mean, I guess it's not exactly.
You got a social machine on it.
We have a good nice time.
Ice jet.
I mean, don't get angry, I guess, regarding that.
There's also a word out here, I'm sorry, at the bottom, it says, hearing by the commission to determine the question of fact. Now, what is the question of fact that they're trying to determine? That whole paragraph to me is just open to, I agree with you, open to interpretation.
So page you on that?
Yeah, page 29 at the bottom. So, the fourth, very first thing, bottom page 29. And I've actually spoken with Mr. Van Hunter several times on the phone, and ask him about this, I don't know, I think maybe.
And he didn't know.
Well, he might, well, this was like 2001, and I was also told that they did this back in 2001 before they had computers, and so they didn't want, they wanted to change something, they had to retype the whole thing up there. It's still like this BFD. So that whole paragraph to me is just not clear. Let me just say that. I'm not going to tell you, and maybe he has some terms like this, but I think your point is valid, and I look at it and I don't really know. Yeah, I don't know what the question of fact is. Is the question of fact whether they're a resort or not a resort, or is the question of fact do they have to have a hearing, or what is the question of fact?
So I think that it's kind of like may have brought things from outside into this in, just like we're all guilty of doing, right? I may have done that. And brought in this idea that zoning is the cities, and if they want to change, they need to change it. That's just a presupposition. I may have brought in the idea of shall meaning must. Because when I read shall, I read must. So I may have brought that in. So I smuggled it into our conversation. And I may have smuggled in the idea that the question of fact is, I'm not operating as a resort, okay? It's not a penalty because I'm a commercial resort operating in R1 residential district. So if I'm not operating as a resort, I get rezoned to residential. That's just how that flows. And so I may have smuggled some concepts into this conversation that maybe we need to have more conversation about. Maybe my smuggling of them may not be that. I'm happy to have that conversation at length.
Well, not only that, but Mike, you may have also triggered some fears in people so that they reacted a certain way, which is not what you intended. You were talking about a lady that quit being a resort 6 years ago and came to the city and said, I don't want to be. And the city said, oh no, you have to. Well, that was 6 years ago. That's not today. Right. You know, and I can sit here and tell you that we've been working now to making changes for a year, a little over a year, for stuff that hasn't been addressed in 17 or 12. And it's because they just didn't get around to it. Well, let's have her in here, let's have the public hearing, let's make this move forward. Because if not, I'm just going to be chasing my tail for another week or 6 months. And it's time to quit chasing tails. It's time to quit listening to other people cast aspersions, if you will, on what I think or what I say. We gotta quit throwing rocks, to be honest.
And the one was the other, we want to prosper together as a city. I appreciate you guys taking the time out to come talk with the city council here. And hopefully we can, come up with some sort of solution down the road. I don't know if we need to, have another meeting like this, but we can, email each other. My door is always open.
I appreciate that. Thank you. And thank you for trying to eat this gigantic elephant. We recognize it's an elephant. It's consuming so much. And thank you for wanting to.
You guys have any more questions? Solution, possible solution? Motion to adjourn. Second? Second. All those in favor?